to suit any adult age, stage and gauge
to help you get on the right track from the get-go. And this is the video I've always wanted to make. It's alright. Hi, my name's Andy and this is my channel Model Oko. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, it won't hurt the bank balance. That being said, you don't know what you want until you know what there is.
Having gone into dual scaling, HMDCC, DCC and all the rest of it, these are the questions that if I was starting out today, I'd need to ask myself.
There's a list, a PDF that I've put below that you can print off if you want, numbered. You can check off what you really do know, what you need to brush up on. As we go through, it'll be more about what's out there and the choices and decisions that all modelers have to face going forward. You can pause this video at any time. To the more experienced, it can be as a refresher because we always forget things along the way. And there's always more to learn. Let's get to it. You can also support me with Buy Me a Coffee, as I'm not sponsored, and help support independent modelling going forward.
So the first part is you and your basics. Where will this planned layout be going? Bedroom, loft, garage, shed, office, under the bed, or packed away when not in use, which can limit time for interaction and a bind to set up. Be aware that sheds can be damp and that can mean mould. Lofts can also be mouldy at times and be sweltering in summer and freezing in winter. They can also harbour condensation like a garage. Offices and under the bed may be drier, but in a room and stuff like this, you've got dust to contend with as a major issue. So it's all got to be planned in. Number two, who is the investment for? Yourself, a friend, a club, a family member. Number three, what are you in it for? The long haul? Just buying a present to see how it goes and if you like it maybe. Why are you doing it and what purpose will it serve? Fun, relaxation, mental health, future ambitions, to work with others. These are all giving us ideas about where you stand and where you're going. Have a drink of tea. Number four,
what will be the focal point of this layout and project? And I'm just giving you ideas here. You can add your own at any point, and if I forget any, there's great comments below, so keep them sweet. We're all here to collaborate. So back to the focal point or points of this layout. Like Shydale here's got the station just as a running display maybe, to highlight something else. Town, shunting yard, loading bay, all ideas. Turntable, engine shed, moving vehicles or a canal scene, industrial area. This is important. Port, viaduct, tunnels, a straight section of actual train line that you've copied from somewhere, or multiple lines, a siding, etc., because we can't have everything. And so focusing on a smaller area and doing that well to get the most out of your investment, I'd say is very important. Shydale is limited by width, so a village station was the focal point here, though there's a road beyond it. There are other areas planned. Loft house upstairs is far bigger, but in double O scale, so also needs more room too. And wanting it all there, a suspension bridge, tunnels, stations, engine sheds, canals, shops, a farm, viaducts, inclines, a roundhouse, turntable, garage, moving cars, coaling station, castle and sidings, to name just a few. But these big ideas I took out when I first started, in reality, can soon soak up space, look cluttered, and also create a mammoth undertaking that I never quite envisaged at first when lost in a buying frenzy, which really gripped me. Whereas the smaller Shydale was up and running much quicker with one main focal point, which leads us on to question 5. And I hope you enjoyed this little look. It's all about generating that imagination and then putting that into action. Procrastination is usually when you're feeling overwhelmed or think you haven't got anything to offer, I don't feel good enough. You are good enough because your layout that you choose for yourself, no one else can do it better than you. You just need maybe a few more skills, get going with a few more things, and you'll be on your way. You'll be right on track. And that's what this video is all about. Let's move on. Question 5. How much time and space have you actually got? Or rather, how much will you be allowed? I mean, that is the crucial one, isn't it?
5 foot before, 8 foot by 6, over above that. You know, I've got 21 by 18 up in the loft, something like that. And I could still go double that and still not have enough, but it's giving a good run for a 00 gauge layout because it has an incline as well and goes in and under itself and loops round on itself. You might just have a narrow shelf width with a fair length even. Or is a floor just going to be your option, you know?
Can you make time? If so, how much and when? Make notes, but I've put down a PDF document below that you can download. It's just 4 pages. You can print them back to back and then staple them together like I've done. And this is part 1, the first 39 steps, okay, to better modelling. Write the answers down. I've left a gap. So if you do that, you're going from the box of imagination and procrastination into taking some action and putting it down in cement, setting a plan out to start the ball rolling. And that's what this is all about. And fair enough, if you sat in the bath or just with your feet up, I understand you can listen along, but you can always come back to this. You can always download this list because there's going to be a lot of it you forget, and it's all right answering it as we go through really quickly, but you're going to lose track of that. If it's written down, it's there, isn't it? It's in front of you and you go, oh yeah, I'm thinking that, but that investment is for, yeah, it's for this, and yeah, that's not going to work. So all those things will go together. Then you can make and steer a realistic plan. And realism is what I'm all about now. It does feel a lot better shaving my hair off because now I can go under the light. Look, I'm not scared. Watch my other video on that if you're wondering why I shaved my hair off. But yeah, it's all good and going forward. Positive steps, being real.
And number 6, what is your budget? 250, 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 plus? This hobby can cost literally more than that. It all depends on what you want. And what is the most important thing on question 7 that comes to mind when considering investing? Quality, cost, the latest tech, reliability, your budget, product choice, for instance. Or you might be a collector, so you might be just collecting things in glass cabinets, hoping to sell them in future, like stamps. Number 8, would you ideally like a box set to possibly build from, or have everything in there to run out of it? Or would you prefer to buy things individually, where you can get more bespoke items and a more professional result, to get what you really need, not just what's given, which can save you buying things again in the future? Number 9, will you be having a portable setup, a fixed layout on a baseboard, no baseboard at all? Will this be a pack away on the floor type setup, or be on a shelf, as we've said, or even on a tabletop? Number 10, what type of layout do you envisage having? An oval? Just a circular bit of track like going round a Christmas tree? An end-to-end? Do you want sidings? Do you want a diorama where running isn't the paramount need? Maybe having a fiddle yard inclusion. I've got a vertical one downstairs, which can double as a display cabinet when not in use. Are you wanting shunting for more playability? And do you want multiple user interfaces where you can set up and have loads of locomotives running at once? Number 11, what scale are you considering? N scale? Is that British N scale or European N scale? TT120, where in the UK we've gone true to scale and gauge for the first time, and this will then match up directly with European products like Arnold and things like that, or other manufacturers like Tillig. You might want 00.
Yes, it does have to be said that 00 is the UK's most popular scale. N scale's probably second. O scale in Europe, TT scale has overtaken N scale, for instance. So all things considered, it might be why Hornby went into this in the first place. We'll have to wait and see. Time will tell. But scale's important, and getting the right one at the get-go can save you a lot of money in the future, unless you're thinking of upscaling. But TT is a great place to start because it's the latest tech in the smallest packages for the best cost, I would say. You're not getting old tech in fancy new boxes.
Or HO. 00 is the UK equivalent, which is slightly bigger than HO because in the past they needed to get the motors and everything into the 00, and we never downscaled again. So HO is more true to scale than 00, but 00 won't match and look right against HO, but they all run on the same track, which is HO gauge.
How does a 00 gauge 176 model fit on HO track? Well, it's quite simple. What they've done is put the wheels a little bit closer together. So they're about 2.35 out of scale, something like that, where HO, the bodies are smaller and the wheels are at the correct distance to the track. So the track suits the locomotive, where in 00 scale, the bodies are slightly bigger and the wheels are closer together. And in fact, now companies like Cavalex are releasing models with interchangeable wheel sets, like on their Class 56, and I believe some of their coaching stock as well. This gauge is called EM gauge, and it has been a very sort of fringe following up until now, but it's gaining ground. So that means that 00 gauge models can finally have the right gauge and space track to suit their size, instead of running on the narrower HO track, which is also toggled to 00 at the moment because the wheels are too close together. So out of scale on all our 00 UK models. Well, that is the mass-produced ones. If you go to somewhere like Pendon Museum, which is an absolutely fantastic place to visit. No, I haven't been. I've just watched their channel on YouTube and it's on my bucket list. And Pete Wortman raves on about it, inspired by one guy to recreate this picturesque view of England back in, I think it is the 1930s. But this is EM gauge at its best. And these models have been scratch built. So it's just the mass-produced ones in this country in 00 scale, but these are 00 scale and they are 00 gauge, EM gauge, which is to scale with the loco. They haven't got wheels 2.35 millimeters closer together than they should be. Fantastic. It's absolutely superb, this Pendon, and I love everything they do. I can't bless them enough. Absolute gratitude to the inspiration that brought this. I know that even the flowers on the buildings, the petals were individually put on. The thatch roofing was hair that was individually put in place. It's fantastic. Absolutely awesome. It depends how far you really want to go.
You might want to go O gauge, or maybe you're not really bothered. But if you aren't bothered, then you still want to make sure that your scales go together in the end. Otherwise, it's just going to look a bit silly and they might not even fit on the track. So it is all about what you know and what you don't know. I'm assuming that some people listening to this who know absolutely nothing. Some may have had a lifetime in the hobby.
Now, I have gone into the perfect scale before today and we've had some big discussions on there and I don't want to get embedded in that. And there are other things you could consider, like Bachmann have gone into 009 scale and narrow gauge. So if you've ever been on the Festiniog Railway, that sort of thing. And this means that a narrow gauge railway is actually done in 1/76 scale. So for instance, when we look at 009 models, these can run side by side with 00 scale models, but the 009 models run on N gauge track, because of course these are narrow gauge trains and rolling stock in real life. NG7 models can run with O scale models, but these run on 00 gauge track. So it's all again swings and roundabouts. It's what you want, but the options are getting more and more with more manufacturers coming on board. So there never has been a more important time to release this checklist than now. I also went on the Ravenglass and Eskdale Miniature Railway, Model Loco ml52. I had a great day out. It's a bit too far down the platform for me, but it might be something that you could consider, and it's space saving too. How that plays out, we'll have to see. Bachmann have gone that route and Hornby have gone TT120. Let's see what transpires. Scale and gauge can be a very contentious, passionate issue. I'm just going from my experience and I'm wanting to give that, especially for those like me that didn't know where to turn, because there's no model shops. I was in no club. I don't go to exhibitions because I work weekends. I don't know of any model railway exhibitions that do midweeks. So for people like that, this is where I'm at. Please comment and try not to get too upset and passionate if I've missed your favourite scale or gauge out. I'm just sticking with the main ones, and there's more than ever out there to look at now. Going forward.
Number 12, how good is your eyesight? Is it okay? Have you got some minor impairments? or age-related issues like myself. Partially sighted, it all impinges on how you interact with a hobby and what scale to go for. So if you are partially sighted or I'm suffering age-related issues, I certainly won't go any smaller than TT120. What era, number 13, do you fancy modelling? Early steam, late steam, early diesel, late diesel, electric, more imaginative, sci-fi, etc.? All eras or a heritage setting? Aren't you bothered, but you just like things to go together a little bit? Or don't you care at all and it's just for fun? Well, you've got a free-for-all if you like that. You might be running a Flying Scotsman with Thomas and a diesel class 43, and you have no idea what you're pulling with each. But as you get into the hobby, if it grows, you will get more critical of what you should be putting with what. If you're not bothered and it's all for fun forever, then we're all different. And so it really is about knowing thyself. Number 14, what scene will you be setting? A rural, summer, winter, UK or non-UK based at all? Or even again, we could go sci-fi on the moon. It's not about Model Loco making choices for you. It's about Model Loco giving you the information so you can make the choices for yourself. Number 15, is buying second-hand something you'd consider? Do you know what to look for and the risks involved, which don't always save but can cost you dearly in the long run, because you can be sold a pig in a poke, as my mum used to say, or you can be buying things that are now out of date, like really big decouplings. You might not see them or notice them at first, but once you've had small decouplings on your locos and you go back to big D, it's like going back to a clockwork train. Most people don't want to go there. Plus two, most modern couplings seen on the left here are now interchangeable with NEM sockets. So you pull those couplings out. The ones on the right, the larger decouplings, are usually molded into the body of the model and you can't change them. And that's why you see a lot of these for sale on eBay and places like that. Not just because they're old, it's because people want the more modern look. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Number 16, are you aware of all the latest advances in model railways? Yes, a little, not all. And I've added a few more on the checklist here so you can look through and see what you do know and what you don't and what's out there in 2025. There might be the odd thing I've missed, but I think I've got most of them covered. But saying that, you know, things like auto uncouplers that Bachmann have just released, which are going to revolutionise the way we shunt things and uncouple things in future, because they've always been a bit hit and miss, to say the least. And other things like steam generators, for instance, and I've got 2 models with those on now. That is chuffing like no tomorrow. Stop playing trains, Andy. This is about the checklist, and we're on number 17 next. Do you have a completion date in mind and some milestone stages? It's good to have them. And I'm not setting a finished date, I never have done, but it's good to have milestones along the way, because some people will always say, well, you never finish a model railway, and that is very true. But also you've got to get to stages so you don't lose interest, so you don't feel bogged down. And little stages, little steps, little baby steps will help you make progress and take action instead of getting overwhelmed. We have got to have completion dates, because if you don't, even though it's a hobby, you've got to be realistic. I mean, nothing lasts forever, does it? Well, yes, we are immortal beings, but that's another point. That's going spiritual. I'm back into the spiritual modeler, which I am a bit of. It's all good stuff. We have to face up to the yin and the yang, the up and the down, the in and the out, the loft and the basement, the shed, the garden, and the checklist. So download it now. Come on, come on. It's 4 sheets, print them back to back so you're saving paper, and it's there for your part 1. As simple as that. The first 39 steps of modelling, and all you've got to do is push a pen or sit in the bath and relax and listen to this video, but it's better to write them down. What are your future plans beyond the finished result? Do you just want a permanent layout to run and constantly add to? One to finish and just play with forever? To build more elaborate layouts in future, maybe sell one on, or keep one, or like myself, have 3? Do you want to go dual scaling, a layout to exhibit, something to share and enjoy and run with others? Maybe a portable fixed setup in sections that you can take down and fit in the back of your estate car or small van. Number 18, what aspect, etc. of the hobby interests you the most? Scratch building, loco repairs, taking things in bits, electronics, kit building, collecting, the latest tech. You'll find you have something that attracts you more than other things. Computer automation, for instance, shunting, scenery, painting, might be airbrushing, recreating an actual scene. Precise scale might be your thing. If so, TT120 has it in droves, but it might be just a bit too small for stripping down those locomotives. You might like replica and detail. Detail might not matter to you. You might like hands-on with a Mac computer or a Windows, iOS or Android control when you go into apps. Number 19, how do you rate your model railway skill level? A newbie, basic, intermediate, or are you pro?
One thing I have learnt with this hobby, you'll never cover every eventuality, and you'll never please all the people all the time. But as long as you're pleasing yourself, that's the main thing.
Number 20, have you already got some model railway equipment? You might have some items, or you might be starting completely from scratch. And this all matters because, number 21, do you have some older locomotives and rolling stock that you'd like to incorporate and a knowledge regarding possible compatibility issues under one control setup? Because DC and DCC won't go together. DC is direct current and DCC is digital command control. They're two very different beasts, but both sound very similar. I've done videos in the past.
If you want to find that video, it's Model Loco ml43. You must type Model Loco ml43 into your YouTube browser and it will come up. It's about model railway, layout control and automation, a beginner basics virtually that goes in depth down that rabbit hole.
Number 22, do you have any plans to do dual scaling like myself, or thoughts on mixing two scales together? Maybe using TT120 in the distance, like putting N-scale buildings on a hillside on your 00 gauge layout so they look as though they're away in the distance because they're smaller, called a forced perspective. Do you just want the most popular scale with the most choice out there and that's it? Do you need to downsize as there's no room for your old 00 or O gauge set that you never get out anymore because there's just no room to put it up?
Next, we're moving on chapter 2, power and control. Let's dig in.
Number 23, would you want an analog, DC layout, DCC layout, as we've said, a Bluetooth digital HMDCC layout, which uses HM7000 decoders, or would you like to mix HMDCC and DCC together? If you've got older locomotives that are DC, you're going to find them very hard to convert to digital DCC. Be aware of that.
Number 24.
Are you aware about the limitations of DC and why DCC has revolutionized model railways and the way we can run them? Yes? Are you skeptical or have you no idea? You've best been honest and then you can find out, because if you don't know or you think you know, you can get into some trouble down the line. Pardon the pun. Number 25. Do you know the difference in transformer regulated voltages and that the more milliamp outputs are usually found on better made or more expensive adapters? It's not always the case, but usually if you look at Hornby ones, you can see some at 50 quid and some a lot lower and you think, why is that price difference? Well, that's down to the milliamp output and how many trains it can run at once without running out of power. So yes, you need more milliamps and better transformers to run larger layouts. Otherwise, you could be finding yourself buying another that you got in the box set that'll run about 2 trains and nothing more. Number 26, do you know about powering peripherals like lots of building lights, say moving windmills, etc., and that it may be best to incorporate a separate transformer to power these, not just something that you've got with a 0.5 milliamp output off your kid's model robot from 10 years ago. They usually just blow. You need a good transformer for those as well, separate, and I've got one downstairs. Number 27.
When it comes to locomotives, and it usually accounts for these, but of course I've got coaches with decoders in as well. But we'll stick with locomotives for a minute.
Are you planning to have DC, DCC ready, DCC fitted, DCC sound?
And not forgetting on some of the railroad models as well, there's TTS sound fitted models, which are a cheaper version of the sound fitted models. And when you're accelerating the locomotives, they don't sound quite as realistic. They'll jump in stages and they're not as good when you start bringing block detection in, but that's another aspect altogether. That's when you go right up the level in model railways. And then of course there's a Hornby HM7000 Bluetooth fitted decoders in new models, and yes, these can run in DCC mode as well. You just toggle in the app between the two and you can pick between Bluetooth running which is through the wireless connection, and there's also DCC, which is fed down the track, as DCC decoders have always been fed with digital instructions since their introduction. And no, we haven't quite finished yet, because our locomotives come in different DCC decoder varieties. So will you be going for
either ready, fitted or sound fitted? Are you wanting a mix? Plan to add DCC or sound later? Ready means it doesn't have a decoder in, it's just got a blanking plate to run on DC, and DCC fitted means it's already ready to run. If it's DCC sound fitted, then it's got sound and DCC as well. It all matters, and sometimes you spend more money buying an old loco, then fitting a DCC decoder, only to think, oh, I want sound on it now, and having to buy another decoder on top later on. Number 28, will you be mixing DCC and even the newer but way cheaper HMDCC Bluetooth decoders together to run off one controller on your setup? Or is this beginning to sound like a physics lesson? Well, it all matters, and these are things you need to brush up on if you don't know, otherwise it could cost you a lot of money further on down the line. It may not matter at the moment, but it will do later on if you really get into this hobby and it gets a grip of you like it has me. Number 29, are you aware you can only run one train at one time successfully on a DC layout unless you've two electrically isolated loops or sections of track, where on DCC you can run more than one train at once on any one loop that's connected together, because pockets of information are then sent to each individually fitted decoder within the train, and the sound comes from in the train, unless you've got Hornby HMDC and not HMDCC. This is all getting complex, and no, but it's all things you need to know before you make that choice.
And again, there's a video I did earlier on about TT120, but it included all the different DCC, HMDCC, HMDC, and the apps and the accessory controllers and how it all works. If you want to find that video, it's Model Loco ML43. You must type Model Loco ML43 into your YouTube browser and it will come up. And just to put you straight as well, you can't run a DC fitted locomotive on a DCC layout, and you can't run a DCC locomotive on a DC layout unless you remove the DCC decoder and put the DC blanking plug back in. And not forgetting either, finally, that any old DC models or ones that are still on sale that are just DC analog models that aren't even DC ready, haven't got the electronics even in them to make them DC ready, just in case. All right.
Number 30, you do know you can't just plug a model railway into a main supply, of course, as that would be extremely dangerous. It's why we have transformers to lower the supply from 240 volts, which is our UK supply, out of the plug to the usually 15 volts that comes out the two wires that you connect from your transformer.
Or if you've got a controller like this one, then you plug the transformer into the power input, and the two wires that come out of the back of the controller, red and black, go to each side and rail on the track.
And then you get a plus and a minus and your trains run round.
Now, to fit these wires, we usually get out of a box set what we call a power track, and it's a piece of track with a bit of a terminal block on, and you can thread the wires in, and it's very easy and simple, but it's very cumbersome looking and it looks awful, and you never see it on a pro layout. They solder their wires to the track, and these are soldered in a particular way. More about that in part 2, but for this video we're just briefly introducing ourselves. More about track next time. And they'll solder various power feeds to their track all around the layout, so they've got a constant power. But these digital power tracks get you going straight away, and some people say, how on earth do I put these wires onto the track? Now, I have done a workshop series, parts 1 and 2. That's Model Loco ML13 and Model Loco ML14. If you search that out, it's not scale or gauge specific. It's soldering tips and all wiring things and pinning and all those things, all included on those episodes if you search them out. That's ML13 and ML14, but you must type Model Loco in before you search on YouTube. Underlay tools, glues and everything else. And Pico also do fish plates with wire feeds already soldered onto the fish plates when people don't like to solder. And then you can slot those on the track. And of course, that is less sort of obtrusive looking on your layout if you really don't want to solder. But that's not really the way to go. It doesn't give you the best connection, and those fish plates always can come loose. And those fish plates that you have got wires on really want pushing on the rail, and then you still want to use your joiner at the end of the track. More about track in the next episode, but this video was sticking to these two subjects, which is you and your layout and your basics and power and control, and everything bleeds into one another, but at least we're getting an idea and we're going and following the flow of it. We're going to get everything in there with 144 pointers. We're doing 39 steps today, so stay tuned and don't forget to download the PDF. And once you've written it down, it helps cement those ideas and gets it into action, gets it out of the head. As I said.
Number 31. Do you want a twin handheld throttle to drive more than one train at the same time with one controller on your layout? Or do you want system link multiple throttles and controllers for multiple units?
It has to be said here too that a lot of these older walkabout controllers are wired in. There's a few like the Digitrax throttle that you can have wirelessly if you buy their bits and pieces to go with it. That sort of toggles with the Digitrax command station, and that's the bit that stays static, which the little accessories plug into, so you can have your throttle wireless and you can have it wired as well. It's up to you. And there's many other controllers out there, different manufacturers, and they all do slightly different things, and some are slightly better than others working with certain computers and different systems. So it's worth checking what are compatible with which. But for me, Digitrax worked well with iTrain and Mac computers. You've also got the option to buy another accessory that will let you use app control as well as your handheld physical throttle, where Roku do the Z21 series, but again, you've got to be careful which box you get, the white box and the black box. You've also got to have a router, and that can lose signal, and that can then take you back to the Railmaster issues that I had. I think it's a lot better than Railmaster, don't get me wrong, but that said, you didn't used to have the ability to have the handheld throttle and app control, and things are changing. So just keep an eye out if you are going the Roku Z21 route, which box and which system you're buying. It's a lot of money. It's often left untalked about, but it's something that you don't want to be investing twice and thrice into. You want to get it right from the get-go if you can. And it's where it's cost me a lot of money in the past from buying things that I really couldn't make work with something else. For me, that's why I went the Digitrax route. This is about getting the right system and the right layout for you, instead of just having to settle with a box set. And then the leap from that to going a lot more pro is why we're doing this video. You want to really check up and make sure if you want a walkabout item like you can with an iPhone and iPad, and we're so used to that now, that any handheld throttle that you buy isn't wired in permanently. And can it be unplugged and used as a wireless item later on if needs be? Because as you go forward, you'll find you don't want something like an headphone wire tangled round your ankle every time you move around the house. Although I do like wired headphones, that's different. But for controlling trains, it's nice to have a wireless controller.
Number 32, is gadget and app control something you'd like?
You know, instead of your traditional handheld throttles that we've been highlighting here, to control your layout and all your other peripherals like building lights and things. In the past, DC layouts, for instance, at first started controlling points and signals with an actual lever connected or wired to hardwired. I'm not on about electrical wire, I'm on about a piece of stiff wire connected under the board to move the point across or move the signal up and down. And then they went to electronic sort of point motors, very basic types in the old days, that would trigger through a toggle switch, and then to buttons and lights and mimic panels. And now we've gone digital, so we can control this all from our throttle or our app. So this is what we're looking at. Do you want app control
without hand controllers, or would you like both? Now, experience with the latest apps is leaving me hardly ever now touching the handheld controllers. In the past, Hornby had Railmaster, and that connected to a PC. HM DCC that Hornby are bringing out and updating as they go on.
And yes, it's a free app, but no, it's not quite there yet. When it comes to the Wii throttle that I use with the Digitrack system, I can control up to 4 trains on one screen. And of course, when you're controlling points and accessories, and the more of those that you're wanting to bring in and use, then this is where the HMDCC app is let down at present. We'll have to see where it goes, as I say, with the updates in future. And it's also why people still like the handheld throttles, because you can control your DCC gadgets from them. If you can remember all the numbers you've assigned to which point and which signal, that's where computer screens and mimic panels take over still and come in, and you can run them together now or have just one or the other. Of course, if you're going to use Bluetooth decoders, it's best to have the HMDCC app, and I love that, and the Wii throttle. These are great apps. And in the next video, I'll say a bit more about what the app does, but basically you can now download sounds and change sounds on the actual decoders, where before HMDCC and HM7000, this had to be done usually in-house or before these items were sold to you, unless you had some very sort of high-tech software on a Windows computer. And I don't use Windows, so that was out for me.
And it's a Gen 1 iPad, it works perfectly, but you need a newer iPhone to make it work perfectly on that. So check compatibility if that's what you want. You might want 2 gadgets. You can only use one gadget with one layout unless you have dongles. I've done videos on that too, so please go into that and look at that.
And you can find these videos by searching again Model Loco ML29 or Model Loco ML30. You must type in Model Loco before the ML29 and 30 to find those exclusively on my channel, but on YouTube. I'm only on YouTube.
Number 33, do you plan to have moving signals or changing aspect signals, you know, the lit ones, or other moving parts on your layout like level crossings with moving gates and flashing warning lights, or just not bother and make it with static crossings? Or you might not think about crossings at all, but if you do, obviously you may need to cross 1 or 2 tracks maximum, so planning is crucial. And of course, if you're going to use moving gates and flashing lights, you want UK gates. If you live in the UK, you don't want European ones, so you've got to watch when you buy that they are compatible with our UK, otherwise you end up spending money again. And planning is crucial to get them all fitting under the baseboards, all the gubbins, you know, all the electrical circuits, and making sure your stems bolt up and everything fits tightly to your baseboard.
Now, I have given level crossings a mention here because I want to highlight Train Tech. They've gone in a different direction and they've now merged with Gauge Master. And these are very interesting if you don't want to use accessory decoders and you don't want to really trigger things. I mean, you can do by DCC, but you can use track sensors when a train passes by these, and they'll fit N-scale, they'll fit my TT layout as well, and they'll fit HO00. That's what they're really made for. And they can look slightly cumbersome next to the track. And I think this is what Hornby've got their eyes on too, for future block detection for HMDCC, but we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, you can get the track sensors, and I've bought a couple and I'm experimenting with them at the moment, but they're interesting. It's an interesting product and an interesting concept. So it automatically will trigger signals with 3 lights, you know, like red, amber and green. There's a timer also built into some of the products. So when a train, for example, has left the station, then the next signal or announcement won't be actuated for a set period. It's really worth a look. The train is triggering further up the line, so it'll put a stoplight on before the train gets to the station. It'll make train announcements. It'll do all these sort of things, and there's different options to wire all these products in. So they're on the Gauge Master site, and you can see what these options are on there. Great little product, great innovation, and I think it was a husband and wife team that started it up. And they've just gone from strength to strength. So it's sort of a different alternative. Whether, again, it holds you back later on if you'll still want to do it that way. If you want full control, then yes, it's the DCC accessory decoder. And the next step up from that, either triggering it from a handheld throttle or from a compatible app device, then it's computer control. And that's, boom, you know, at the top of the game. And for me, it's going to be controlled by a Mac, not Windows. I got my fingers burnt with Railmaster on that regard.
Number 34, will your layout need reverse loops, and do you know what these are and why we use them on our layouts? I've done a brief introduction to these on my TT layout updates at Scheidel, but I can do more on it if you remember and you request that sort of thing. You need to know and learn about why you might need a reverse loop. Sometimes you really want to incorporate them to make a layout more realistic or a better running experience.
I've got two incorporated here on the Scheidel layout, the two different models, but both work nearly the same, one slightly better than the other, and I have a video all about that. You can find this video on Modeloco ML20. You must type in Modeloco and ML20 together to find it on YouTube. The TT120 model railway layout update, Hornby Pico, Unifrog Crossings reverse loop modules, and it's in that video.
35, are you aware you can trigger points?
Well, if you weren't before, by watching this, you should be now. Not just by hand, but you could use levers, as we said in the old analog days, or switches like they did then, and now by DCC or Bluetooth, if you use the necessary accessory decoders and the different types. Now in the UK, as far as I know, Hornby are the only ones that are doing the Bluetooth accessory decoders, and these you've got to be wary of because you can only use so many on any one layout, and I've highlighted that in that other video I pointed to earlier on. And while we're still on the subject, the HMDCC app, for instance, it's free, but at the present time, it won't really work with non-Bluetooth accessory decoders that are DCC. So you need to use a bit of a workaround and use a HMDC accessory decoder, which really wasn't made for the system, but it sort of works, and you can only have up to about 8 of those toggled together, and they all need separate power supplies. Bearing this in mind, and I think that's why the app's free, because then you haven't bought it, so you're not really losing anything. But it does highlight for me that companies are almost boxing us into their products by design, and here at Modeloco I'm making you aware so you don't get trapped by it later on like I did, so you're having to buy again and again. It's a lot of money and it's left untalked about, and it needs saying. When we look at accessory decoders, we've got to bear this in mind depending on how many points and signals we are going to be actuating and moving. And let's not forget the train tech items that I showed earlier. You could go down that route. It's all what you want for your layout. Now, also, we've referred to mimic panels. Now, what is a mimic panel? Well, in the old DC days, people would have a faceplate. And on that faceplate, you'd have all your switches or toggle switches or buttons sometimes, and lights as well. So when you moved a switch, it would move your points, move your signal, and a light would tell you which way that point or signal had been moved. And on a mimic panel, you'd have a diagram of your layout, and the layout would have lights at either side, so you could tell whether you were steering the train into a siding, because points are what steer your train onto different tracks and into sidings and stations and things like that. And we'll talk about that more in the next video. But for now, we're looking at power and control. And so points and signals can be triggered, as we said, using a mimic panel. You can still use a mimic panel today, but it's all gone in the box, and you might want to use a computer screen, and that's why things like iTrain have it all on the display, or Railmaster for that matter of fact. It had it all shown there, so you could see it would be shown graphically or on your mimic panel by a light. Sometimes it's still better to have that on display in front of you, but it depends how big your layout is. So the more complex it is, the more complex your mimic panel is going to have to be. But on a graphic screen, it looks a lot better, especially in 4K. Going forward, we're getting more and more involved now. But these are all the considerations that pro modelers have to take into account and almost go into by default before they take their next step. They're thinking about all these things, but as I said, it's good for pro modelers to come in and look at too, because even they forget things. I don't call myself a pro modeler. There's always new stuff to learn, and that's the marvelous thing about this hobby. There's always more, and you can go as far or as minimalist as you really feel you want to, and you can always expand or always contract. Move the chair. Joking apart though, what we're doing here today, in all the 3 videos I'm going to release, these are going to be the modelling essentials, and I'm looking, because I'm so keen and interested in the hobby, at what's coming up as well and things I'm finding out. There's always little bits more sneaking in, and the comments below, so keep them sweet, as I've said, for others to look at and discuss and glean from, because we're all here to collaborate, not compete. A layout runs because it cooperates with itself. When you're competing with each other, you've got 2 blocks and one's trying to sell you this and one's trying to sell you that. And we're in the middle as consumers thinking, don't go with that, and it's all over the place. This is what this video is about. But that said, we're going back to points and controlling them with accessory decoders and things like that. And the DCC accessory coder is usually the thing that we use to control points and peripherals and auto uncouplers. But as we're seeing, Bachmann are putting these uncouplers on their actual trains now, instead of having them in the track before that used to lift your coupling system up and down. Bachmann are mounting it into the front of and the backs of their locomotives. There's a shunter, a Class 08 and 09 are coming out next year, and they've already got a Class 30 and 31 with these on. And these automatically, by DCC, lift up and down. Some people have said that you need brass uncouplers on your locomotives, and Bachmann are putting these in the box, a few free ones. So the brass won't interact magnetically like steel ones with the electricals that lift these up and down. I'm showing the Class 30 here, and the one I like most. They have a roof fan that goes at different speeds depending on how the train is running. They've got different lighting arrangements and different head codes and things for the different models. So you can see the Class 30 I like has got a proper numbered head code, and they've got a detailed interior. But most of all, the deluxe models have got the auto uncoupler, and these can be removed if they were to go wrong or anything like that. You can take them out of the NEM socket that we talked about when we're looking at couplings. So you could just put a normal coupling back in there if you wanted, but I wouldn't be doing that, definitely not, if I add one of these to my collection. And we can look at the Class 08 and 09 while we're at it. These are coming with fitted LED lamps that are prototypical depending on which model you go for in 08 or 09, which era and stuff like that. Then they're putting in now stay alives, or power banks as we call them, and of course there's the auto uncoupler. Absolutely awesome. These models are just top notch. Power banks or stay alives, whatever you want to call them, they keep your locomotive running if a locomotive hits a dead piece of track, because your power comes to drive your motor and your locomotive and your DCC and your Bluetooth chips and everything else from the track power. So if it hits a point that's a bit dead or a dirty piece of track, the stay alive keeps the locomotive going. These stay alives vary in capacity for charging. Hornby are just bringing some new ones out very shortly, reduced in size to fit in even more locomotives than before. And these come with a plug on the end to fit on the new Bluetooth decoders that are releasing. So there's no soldering involved, where before you had to solder these on or get your distributor to solder them on for you before they post them out. Another reason why maybe you want to come over from DC into DCC, or not go into DC by mistake thinking you're buying and getting a cheap layout, when really these are the sort of things that you want in DCC sound with uncouplers on and all the latest tech. That's where I'm going. I love it. This is what's really getting me into the hobby. And if anything, 00 has everything there. That's what sort of swung me a little bit from TT, which is great here in the Mac Cave, where I'm doing my presentations and things like that. But back into the loft, it's swinging me back up there, out into the shed and down to the loco lift, because these things that are coming in like steam generators and stuff like that. And these models are popular. People are looking, 23k views. Look, see my reviews on the Prince of Wales P2 by typing in Model Loco ml52, or there's this Flying Scotsman at ml44. And you can look at that and get a good dig in and see what they're all about. For these 00 gauge models are fantastic. And as I said, you can go now and open your wheels out and go on EM track. So it's perfectly scaled 00 gauge from track to train. It's fabulous. And look at that, isn't it beautiful? That chuffs along round the layout. like a good one. Absolutely lovely model. That's a Bachmann one, by the way. So when you start costing up, look at these accessory decoders. Find out how many peripherals these can trigger with one unit, because it may be more cost effective to buy one that costs a little bit more money but has more outlets. For instance, the Hornby one, the DCC decoder, I'm not on about the HMDC one, the Bluetooth one. I'm on about standard DCC. I think that's still the way to go. Check out how many outputs they have. For instance, the Hornby one only has 4. So if you've only got 4 points and that's all you'll ever need, that's fine. But if you've got 8, 16, 24, it might be more profitable to go with someone like your Mork.
And they want triggering from your controller, but you'll need room for a point motor fixed under your baseboard or surface mounted next to your points. Quite expensive when you start adding them together. So all right, thinking I'm going to have points here and points there and signals here and signals there, and they're all going to move and everything's going to run. You've really got to think about the cost. You need those accessory decoders. Most only trigger 4 things, and sometimes you might want to trigger 2 sets of points at once.
And of course, some point motors work differently than others. Some just need an impulse and they'll move the point. Others, like the tortoise ones that move the point rails very slowly and more authentically, need more power. It's more costly to go down that route, but it's more authentic looking. So if you are going down the tortoise or the slow moving point motor route, then check out with your dealer or whoever you're buying them from that they can operate with the accessory decoders that you're either buying or have got. You might just be all right, as I am, with the impulse ones that just click over and back. And as far as I can see, most modern accessory decoders can trigger 2 sets of points at once without causing an overload or a delay or waiting to recharge themselves, because they all are powered usually from the track, unless, as I say, you've a separate powered transformer, and I would anyway if I had more than 2. So if you're on a crossing, you want to trigger them both at the same time, because you're always going to use them in conjunction with each other. So it needs looking into. I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole, but we can always go into it later if there's any questions from members and stuff like that. Anyway, back to it.
All needs planning in and all needs thinking about, but these all fit usually under your baseboard somewhere, so you need room for that, and you need to get to them in case anything goes wrong or a wire comes loose or gets snagged. Number 36, do you envisage computer control to help you run your layout and the incorporation of track block detection so the computer can sense where your trains are at any one time on the track and stop collisions as you drive the other trains around, etc. It's something I've gone into. It's something that's great, but you need up-to-date stuff. You need to probably go into Europe to get that stuff. Hornby aren't really there with it yet, whether they ever will. They have said they would in the past and then they let it go. They have hinted at it in future with HMDCC, but as yet nothing's transpired and I can't see anything coming down the pipeline. If anything, things have slowed down and Hornby seem to be going more to the budget side, should I say.
All that said though, Hornby, from my gut feeling, watching and reading a few things, that Hornby are hinting at some sort of train tech device, you know, where there's a sensor at the side of the track, a sort of more plug and play, keeping it simple form of basic block detection. Let's wait and see.
Number 37.
Good wiring is needed.
Do you know to use decent copper-rich 2-core wire on your layout? And obviously, you want slightly thicker wire for your dropper wires and your feed wires to your track and to any block detection that you use, and thinner wires to things like signaling and lights and stuff like that. But you want good quality copper rich wire. Don't just buy the cheapest. Number 38, do you know block detection and reverse loops need special plastic insulating joiners and wiring?
These insule joiners go at the end of your track where you join your track together. The gauge specific, so you've got to get the right ones for the right gauge of track that you've got. And also that these are in place of the usual track joiners or fish plates that we use to join our tracks together.
All this needs planning into your layout. So number 39, the last in this chapter, if you're planning block detection and you're going to use a computer to control that, will you be using a Mac or Windows? Now I'm using a Mac, so I've got iTrain. Now iTrain will not connect to the Hornby system because iTrain uses a protocol that is called LocoNet, and Hornby Elites and Selects use ExpressNet. They look very similar, but they're two very different beasts. So make sure you look into that without spending money on computer software or controllers that will not go together further down the line. When I'm using iTrain, I've got to use a Digitrack system. And if I'm going to use a Digitrack system and I want to use gadgets, then I can't use the HMDCC app. I've got to use a special app that goes with the Digitrack system. Okay? All these companies will sell you their products, but it all depends on what you want and where you want to go.
And that concludes the video. We've got a few subjects on the next video, part 2. In total, 144 pointers to get you on the right track, the fast track to better modelling and a better modelling experience in future. Give us a thumbs up and please subscribe, helping you to help me to help others. And if you want to become a member, there's going to be extra video and content as well, probably to supplement videos like this in future. If this video has helped you in any way, you can also support me with Buy Me a Coffee, as I'm not sponsored, and help support independent modelling going forward. Thanks for tuning in. I hope it hasn't been too labour intensive. It's also out as a podcast as well. There's not that much video footage to show with it. It's more informative, where you can lay back in the bath or sit on the sofa, just shut your eyes or sit with a pad and write down what it is you know and what you don't know. That's the purpose of this, to get you in the place where you've got your knowledge and your skills and you know where you're at with them all and you know what there is out there on the market 2025. Until the next one, happy modelling.